This is Success in Excess, where elite founders, lawyers, and clinic owners engineer success through strategy, scale, and systems. Powered by GrowthX.
Welcome back, everybody, to Success in Excess, where vision meets precision and law firms don't just grow, they dominate. Today's episode is powered by GrowthX, America's #1 law firm marketing agency. With over $100 million in results and over $10 million in ad spend management, we've perfected the art of scaling law firms, not just for scalability, but sustainability. Now, if you're a growth partner and you're really looking to take your firm to the next level, you can reach us at growthxmarketing.ai. Remember, you want to scale, but you also want to be sustainable at the same time. Today's episode is powered by none other than Andy Citrin Injury Attorneys, a powerhouse personal injury firm built on results, reputation, and relentless advocacy for the injured across the Gulf Coast. Now, Andy Citrin isn't just an attorney, he's a strategist, courtroom force, and an entrepreneur who's taken the fight for fairness from the local headlines to the legal history books. Let's get into the origin, the mindset, and the growth playbook behind one of the South's most dominant legal brands. Andy, welcome to the show. Take us back. What inspired the launch of your firm? And what are you seeing in the legal landscape at your current time that makes you think, hey, I can do this better, and this is why my firm is one of the top firms in the country?
Well, thank you for having me. I'll tell you my origin. I came up under Top Gun attorneys. When I went to law school, I had kind of underperformed in college, like a lot of my friends. I partied. I did the fraternity thing. My dad chewed me out, and I went off to law school, and I had one thing in mind. I wanted to master the law and be the best I could be. I was like a sponge. I had some of the greatest professors any young person could ever have, 3 sitting Supreme Court justices of the Alabama Supreme Court, not U.S., but still, and what we called the father of the Alabama Rules of Civil Procedure. He was not only my civil procedure professor, but my trial advocacy coach. And I didn't party. I was just utterly focused on that. And I fell in love with Alabama. I originally hailed from South Florida down by Hollywood, but because I was top in my class, I had a lot of offers, but I decided I wanted to be a personal injury lawyer because I was most inspired by those guys. And my professors all said the best firm in the state was where I went, which was at Cunningham Bounds in Mobile, Alabama. And when I went there, I wanted to go there as a trial lawyer, but they only had a position as an appellate lawyer. So I spent the first 10, 12 years of my career working for them. I became a partner, but those guys were the real deal. They were the top tier guys that you could ever find anywhere in this position. I mean, as an attorney in the United States. And all the top tier guys are like that. So that was my upbringing as a young lawyer. I started at 24. I worked as an appellate guy. I did all the brief writing, all the research. I did all the oral arguments. It's interesting because my mentor, he told me from day one, your job is to become indispensable, number 1. Number 2, you're going to be the best appellate lawyer in the state of Alabama. Start thinking of yourself that way. We're going to make this happen in record time. And all you have to do is work, make yourself indispensable. And, I never had anybody believe in me like that, but I saw this methodology. There was no toleration for mediocrity whatsoever. There was a very strong, aggressive approach to it. And that's how I learned. And after 10 or 12 years of doing appellate work, they wanted me to stay on, but I was getting burnt out because I had so many cases of first impression. I had over $100 million worth of verdict on appeal, 17 appeals running at once. And I had just gotten married, had my 3rd child on the way. And I was like, man, I'm going to crack up. I can't keep working like this. And truly, I wanted to be a trial lawyer. I didn't want to do the appellate stuff anymore. So I thought best thing for me and my family was to set out on my own and do what I had learned at that great firm, take everything they taught me and set up my own practice. And I did that in 1998. And it's been the greatest 27 years of my life ever since I left. And I'm just thrilled by all I did was repeat what I had been taught. And then I started I guess I was about 25 years into law practice. I'd gotten a lot of verdicts, a lot of great results, plenty of, affirmances on appeal. I had made my name. I had made plenty of money. And I saw these advertisers and I thought the future, these guys are the future because I was getting the referrals from them. and they were referring me big cases. And I was with a client one day, and I said, "Why did you pick this advertising firm? I mean, this man's head was nearly blown off, and I got a multi-million-dollar outcome, and I'm about to send a huge referral fee. And I'm sitting down with my client, who I've come to love, and we've become buddies. And he says, "Man, I chose them because they were on TV." I said, "Yeah, but what'd you know about them? What'd you know about their ability? They were on TV, man. I figured if they were on TV, they knew what they were doing." And that's when I decided I was gonna. And I thought, what would happen? Because most of the lawyers that I had seen on TV were not real trial lawyers. They would refer to real trial lawyers. I'm not saying that they didn't do right by their clients, but they weren't what I considered the top tier. And I thought, I wonder what would happen if a trial lawyer started advertising. And that's how I got into advertising, and my firm just exploded when I started advertising. That was in 2011. Yeah, 2011 when I first started, but I really got started in 2014. That's when I got serious. And now I had a scale issue. How do you grow it? And that took a long time to learn. And that's where a lot of my recent lessons have been learned. In addition to getting big verdicts, we've gone through a lot of growth and a lot of growing pains that other lawyers that are thinking about advertising or in advertising, that they could learn a lot from what I've been through. And that's how I got started. And the growth opportunity now that I see, with this AI thing that's developing, I don't know how long we lawyers can continue working the way we're working. It scares all of us because it's such a big unknown.
Absolutely.
But I know this, that right now, this is a great time to be a trial lawyer, especially if you hone your skills and you're smart about things. You can have a tremendously rewarding career helping people and making a great living.
Andy, you touched on a great subject, artificial intelligence, AI. 2 years ago, Goldman Sachs came out with the comprehensive report talking about how AI is going to change various industries. And when they put a risk analysis, they asked what industry could be the most vulnerable or affected. Now, not negatively, but not positively, but just overall affected. And the legal industry was number one. It wasn't medical, it wasn't insurance, it wasn't, it was the legal industry. And, you touch on something that's really important. You can have AI write a brief. You can have AI, file a docket and, write up a bond and whatever you need to do in that area, right? Or even do the research for the medical examinations and whatnot and organize everything. But at this point in time, there is no replacement for a real trial attorney. It just isn't. There's no AI going to be represented in court. And even recently, there was a court case that was kicked down. It was a criminal case, but the individual had came to court, not an attorney, came with his laptop and basically was using Chat GPT to answer the questions of the court. And the judge instantly put him in contempt in court and basically was like, we're not going to do this here. This is not going to happen in my courtroom, But how AI is shaping the way of how law firms operate, how they manage, and how they market is truly tremendous on its overall effects that it's having on the industry. We're watching firms that generally may take 1, 5, 10, 15 years to get some traction that are hitting those multi-million-dollar cases 2-3 years in because they're getting the exposure. They're having the ability to scale their marketing efforts, where before, it was literally manpower. And if you couldn't have the money and the cash flow, especially, your personal injury. Starting a personal injury firm, one of the main basic focuses is cash flow in the beginning. If you're dealing with disbursements that could be, 12, 15, 18 months out or 6 months out, what do you do in that situation where, hey, I got to keep the lights on. I got to pay the bills. I got to pay my staff. I know I'm going to get paid because I have these very lucrative potential cases in front of me. But even if they were to go to settlement, how long until I get paid out? And that really stunts the growth of most personal injury firms in the beginning because most people are going out on their own. They're taking whatever money they have saved up and they're putting it towards the business. And if they don't have a real strategy in mind other than, hey, I'm going to be a great personal injury attorney, I'm, really good at what I do, that marketing, people don't really understand is that is the only actual direct correlation to cash flow generation in your business. You can get a great paralegal, you can get a great office, you can, create a great, let's say you could create a great intake team. All these things could be amazing. But if your marketing isn't on point, everything else falls apart. And most importantly, you know this better than anybody. Is there a direct investment that you can make into the business today that is directly going to correlate to increasing cash flow, revenues, client acquisitions, other than your marketing. And I think, going all these years and learning it from the ground up has really made you, not only an inspiring attorney, but reason why you're on the show today is because you're the top performing personal injury attorney in your field. I mean, you're literally one of the best of the best. So the question kind of goes back to, was there a defining case or a moment that became your personal proof of concept where you said, hey, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to, kick ass while I'm doing it and be the best that I can be at the time?
Yeah, well, that's a big question. Forgive me if I answer it the best I can, but starting with, I'll tell you, there's a downside to marketing, and the downside to marketing is cash flow, and it can become like heroin, where the only way to keep the cash flow coming to pay for the marketing bills, because to compete, honestly, if you're going to try to market, you want a certain share of voice so you're not throwing your money away. You've got to have a profitable cost per case. But see, you start thinking like a widget factory when you start drilling down on data points and trying to figure out what's a profitable cost per case. That's all business. That has nothing to do with the law. But so what happens, this is the biggest danger for marketing firms. If you're going to be competitive and you're going to attract plenty of new clients with your marketing, and AI can help you with your marketing, will this message produce phone calls and clicks, or won't it? You can get all kind of, AI is a good amplifier and it's accelerator because it can help you get things done faster and you're more on point. But the thing that it can't do for you is predict how are you going to pay those 5 television stations every month, right? How are you going to pay for all the pay-per-click and all the digital and all the billboard bills? The only way you can do that is by sometimes sacrificing the quality of representation. You can become a hamburger flipping factory, a widget factory, where you've got to, this is the crack, this is the heroin that I'm talking about, where to keep the lights on, you've got to start moving those cases. They've got to move. How are you going to come up with the $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 you need each month? If you're going to pay, and if you're going to be in a competitive market like Mobile, Alabama is one of the most competitive per capita in the country. It's insane how many guys are on television. And the only way to do that is become a hamburger flipper. Well, I got to tell you, that just runs against everything I came up with as a young lawyer. I was trained by guys that thought a client first, you do the job right, but you got to be smart about the cases that you're going to put all that time, effort, and resources into. So the best thing you can do is to segregate your best cases, and the best lawyers in your firm, the true trial lawyers, they bring the full Monty to those big cases. And you've got to have sort of a business mindset about the smaller cases that you can move through and you can help those people. It's legitimate, honest work, but it's more like reverse insurance engineering than it is reverse insurance adjusting. Than it is real lawyering. A little rear ender that's worth $20,000 is not going to require that you file suit and you bring in experts and you do all that. It doesn't make any sense. But if you advertise enough, you will get some big cases in there. The question for the lawyers that are out there advertising is, do you know what to do with those big cases? Because if you treat them like you do your smaller ones and you flip them and you just try to write letters and process them like they're just pre-lit claims, you're never going to really make it in that. Some firms do because they have so much volume coming through. But I feel for those clients that they might be getting $1 million on their settlement, but they don't realize their case was worth $10 million or $8 million. And they left a lot of money because the firm was on that crack pipe where they had to have cash flow to pay for those marketing. And so one of the big lessons for me is, if I stick to my principles and my core training, the values I was raised on as a young lawyer, that we're going to bring a hard and fast, skillful, we call it strength, speed, and skill. We're going to be strong. We file immediately. We go hard and fast after the other side. And that's why we've developed a process that's easy to pass on to young lawyers and paralegals that's really lit up the firm. I'd say that's one of the most interesting innovations. There's 2 big innovations a law firm's got to have. They're going to advertise. They got to know what to do with the smaller cases and how to get them through with client satisfaction and for value for those clients. And that's going to be the vast majority. 80% of the cases are going to fall into that. But the top 20% is where you're going to make your money. That's where there's real opportunity for some big outcomes. But those clients deserve a strong, speedy, skillful lawyer. And that's not doing reverse insurance adjusting. That's filing suit, bringing in the experts. You're going to spend a lot of money and a lot of time and being very skillful with the cross examinations, the motions to compel, the aggressive approach to the whole case. If you bring that consistently on your big cases, then you can have a really, really rewarding practice. But you can't treat those big cases like widgets. You can't treat them like that. They're not to be processed. And as long as we have juries which are made up of human beings, I think there's going to be a place for us trial lawyers, because I think there's going to reach a point in time where we start to develop some distrust for AI. I think that's why the judges have developed some distrust for it.
Absolutely.
It can lead you astray, and it can also make you feel like you're a robot. Like if you go on right now and you ask Siri a question, and I ask Siri the question, we're going to end up getting virtually the same answer, right? And we won't even know that there might be another nuance or there might be something else out there, but because we're getting all fed the same thing, I think that there's going to be, until it gets to where maybe a whole new generation comes up under it and they really trust it. That may be hopefully 30, 40 years down the road, but I don't know. AI is so frightening to me. I'm like a lot of
It
people
is.
my age that are like, wow, I can't even predict. Like I heard the other day that if you wanted to be a number one music singer, right? Like AI could write the song for you and could help harmonize your voice for you and then create little dance moves and stuff for you to appear on like some AI created version of you. So it would create a song, and then all of a sudden you're a pop star and you can't sing do re mi, but they could figure out how to do it. And I don't know if that's I heard that, that AI can produce singers, top singers now. How
No, it
frightening is
can't.
that?
No, it can. I actually have a tool that it's called Suno, and literally you have to have no music talent whatsoever. You don't have to know how to sing, don't know how to, read music, you don't know how to do any compositions. Literally, if you say I want to make a country song about a breakup, drinking beer and going out on the town, it'll write the whole script. And if you say, hey, I want it to be a mix of, Garth Brooks and da 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 da, it'll create the sound, create the voice, and you'll have a full compilation song from scratch within 10 minutes. And, we just heard recently, mega producer Timbaland, he was the first person to sign an AI artist. So it's like a Japanese girl who's doing pretty much, that's what she does. She does compositions through AI. She doesn't sing. She doesn't play an instrument, doesn't play piano, doesn't know music theory, just creates stories and tinkers with some sounds with the AI, and then it creates a song for her. But it is scary. AI is scary. And the thing is, it can't be fully trusted. It is what people need to understand. Like you said, it's an expediter. It's a catalyst. It's going to help you get the busy work done to get you 80% of the way. But that personal interaction, that real insight from a human brain, and, specifically you're in personal injury, people are dealing with catastrophic losses, injuries that may affect them for the rest of their life, families that are broken up. I mean, there's a real emotional component to it where you have to be a human, right? Where the AI may be able to say, it's very sad that this happened to their family, but it doesn't really understand because it doesn't have a family. It doesn't know how it feels to have a young child lost because of a drunk driver, or a single mother of two kids, die from, a T-bone accident, going to work in the middle of the day. It doesn't understand the gravity behind that. And I think that's where, if you integrate it too much into some of society's most fundamental industries or even systems that operate on a civilized standpoint, you're going to take away that humanistic component that allows us to have the compassion and not, it's why in America, if a murderer gets convicted, they don't say, okay, let's kill him the same way he killed somebody. Because AI would say, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. He killed somebody. Let's kill him right now. There's no point for a case. There's no point to understand, what his trauma was as a child or whatever it may be. And in the same aspect, it also will look at, let's say in a personal injury situation, well, let's say somebody loses his foot. Well, if he's not a runner, he's not a marathon runner, he's not a construction worker, he doesn't make money with his foot, they're gonna be like, well, the foot, realistically is valued at, $20,000, and, it's very, black and white, cut and dry. And it's not gonna say, well, he'll never be able to hike again. He'll never be able to, throw the football with his son again and be in the yard and do things like that. And the things that really, that pulls at the jurors' heartstrings and really bring those punitive damages, higher, because these are lifestyle, conflicts that coming about. And you're absolutely right. You have been advertising correctly. And, the one thing that I want the audience to understand, Andy, you focus on quality over quantity. And I've seen so many law firms in my history. I've worked with over 50 different firms, ranging from, handling over $1 billion in settlements to even smaller firms that, the guy just left a big firm and now he's starting his own firm. And the one thing that I always see that it's unfortunate is when they get to that point of scaling where they've surpassed, there's a mental breaker point where, when you're making $300,000 a year, you're in a good position. Your lifestyle is good. When you hit $750,000 a year as your personal income by running your firm, there's another level to that. And then when you surpass that 1.5 million point, your mindset is more focused on wealth generation, building the brand, building out the firm longer, because your basic necessities, you have the nice car, you have the nice house, yeah, your bills are paid, and your money at the end of the day is now focused, instead of let's make money, it's more like, how can my money make money? How can I build this bigger? How can I build the intangibles more exponentially? And what happens classically is, and it's unfortunate, the quality goes down, right? Because it's a widget factory at that point. But you've been able to master the art of scaling your brand, scaling your firm, and still providing that one-on-one quality, counseling, the quality, attorney services that most people don't really get, and you're the founder of the firm. And I'm pretty sure any client that you have, they can, call you right up and you're there for them and their case file, front to back, and you don't have to have an assistant say, can I call you back in 15 minutes because you got to look at their file, because you're that guy. You've built your firm on quality. So as we go into this, have there been any moments where standing by your principles cost you short-term gains, but strengthen your long-term brand?
I think one of the core difficulties of bringing in a lot of cases is, do you have lawyers? It's finding lawyers who know how to do it the way I want to see it done, which is top tier lawyering. And top tier lawyers don't grow on trees. And I think one of the greatest innovations that I've had that have helped me stick to my principles was I learned how to hire right. If you hire right, particularly you start with your lawyers, then when you hire great lawyers who are kind of what John Morgan calls red meat eaters, they need a fresh kill every now and again. They're like lions, tigers, and bears. Those kind of guys, they're high A's, they're alpha types, men and women, by the way. But you don't have to micromanage those guys. And those types of lawyers, you can find them. We discovered something called Culture Index Survey. It has been transformational. And I'm only sorry I didn't implement it sooner, because I had a friend that was in the trucking industry. He had a college degree, but he retired when he was 49, and he's just been playing the stock market ever since. But he was a manager of the Mobile terminal of a trucking industry. And he told me when he saw some of the woes that we go through, because we like to drink beer and hang out together and bike ride and do things. And he'd say, Andy, you've got to get this thing called Culture Index. It was a game changer for us. It was a game changer because we started hiring right, and I didn't have to fire so many people. And then the company went public, and I was able to retire at 49. That's how transformational it was. So I put it off and put it off and put it off. And finally, a few years ago, I adopted it. And when I did, all of a sudden, they said, you're looking for a high A type. This is a personality, the highly autonomous type of personality. And there's a profile to it. Anyway, we started hiring for that. Oh my God. All of a sudden, I've got lawyers around. I tell them what the Andy Wins trial process is. My .com is andywins.com. But to help teach lawyers and paralegals this process, I developed something called the Andy Wins trial process. And that's all just a great big acronym. But I would show them this, and I would send them to the Trial Lawyers University. I don't have to repeat myself with these guys. These guys are the real deal. These are just your top tier, Top Gun kind of fighter pilots. They get it. They're living their dream to be given big cases and a lot of autonomy, and to be surrounded by other top tier lawyers. Nick Saban used to say the high performers don't like mediocre performers, and mediocre performers don't like top performers. Do you
They
put
don't.
a bunch of high A top performers in a law firm together, and you've got a powerhouse. Now, when you advertise, and you bring in all those extra cases, those lawyers can tell the difference between a $20,000 case and a $2 million case. In a heartbeat, they can tell. They know what to do with the $20,000 case. Most importantly, they know what to do with the $2 million case. So that's one of the secrets, culture index, picking the right people, and then training them right. And that's why we have this process. I was thinking about it. I live here on the Mobile Bay, and I've got a bunch of boats and nets and fishing poles and everything. And people always marvel at how clean and orderly everything is in my boats. And I'm like, because I have a process for everything. There's a proven way to do things. My dad used to say a clean boat is a safe boat. There's a lot of weather out there, but
Yep.
every single thing that I do has a process. That's why my life looks so orderly and things are in place. So we have a process for how we prepare our big cases, what we do for those clients. It's strength, speed, and skill. That's the outside messaging. Like we're partnering up with the University of South Alabama. They're developing a big team. The Jaguars here, we're known for Alabama football, but this is the Mobile. This is the South Alabama version, and it's University of South Alabama, USA. We're partnering up with them, but strength, speed, and skill is the key to great lawyering. You got to be strong. You got to have a strong mindset. There's a couple of poems and a couple of vignettes from movies that I always use to drill home what the mindset of the strength mindset. And we bring that to bear on our clients' cases. We look for people that get fired up by Invictus or Rooster Cogburn's approach. You watch a person light up when they hear that, and you've got somebody who's a red meat eater that wants the opportunity. They're playing for the upside, and they're not afraid of risk. And but they're not going to take stupid risks. They're really smart. They got to be smart people, and they're willing to follow a process. When you got that, then you can get past a lot of the real dangers of being an advertising firm. I'm going to tell you, I made every mistake in the book hiring. Because when my brand really took off, I started hiring
left and right.
And it was a fiasco for me because these lawyers were not trial lawyers. They were afraid. They hadn't tried cases. They don't like to stand up in front of juries. They don't like to go take depositions. They don't like to travel. But you give that same set of circumstances to a true trial lawyer, and man, he's chomping at the bit. He can't wait to get out there and take those depositions. He's going to hone his cross-examination skills. He's going to figure out every little nuance there is and the 87 rules of civil procedure we've got. And, with the subparts, there's probably 3,000 rules of civil procedure. But, there's a game clock and there's a play clock. And I always teach this. You've got to remember when you're watching a football game, a soccer game, a basketball game, there's always a clock. And that's the game clock. And in basketball and in football, there's always a play clock. Once the ump puts the ball back down on the line of scrimmage, that 25 seconds starts ticking out. The play must go on, or you're going to be pushed back 5 yards and another 5. And the delay that happens in our profession, that is the most demoralizing thing to our clients. And that can kill a law firm. If you let a case get too old, one of your most important cases, and you could lose the client's sense of resilience. Their emotional stamina is depleted every time another quarter sneaks by and they're no closer to trial.
Get pushed back and pushed back.
Yeah, and I think that these lawyers that take their big cases and try to pre-lit them, man, that's the weakest thing you can do. What is more weak than waiting? Until you file suit, you haven't even started the game clock. But if all your lawyer is doing is waiting, it makes the client worry. They don't see any aggressive action taking place. Writing letters, polite letters don't scare insurance companies. Our process says our job is to win. When we say Andy wins, Andy worries insurance nonstop. That's what WINS means. Worry insurance nonstop with all these techniques and processes that we follow. And because that's who your real foe is. You want them worrying. You want them almost peeing blood until they say, okay, what's it going to take? How much money do you guys need? Then
exactly.
That's strength. When you negotiate from strength and you bring that strength to bear down on the case on behalf of the client and you move fast with skill, that worries insurance nonstop. I'll tell you that. And that's part of our process is, so act now, don't yield, ANDY, Andy wins. Act now, don't yield, worry insurance nonstop. If you just did those things, without hearing all the rest of the techniques and tools that we use, you would already have the mindset of a trial lawyer. You're a man or woman of action. You act now. You don't wait. You don't yield when they go, we want to try to settle this case. Don't try to get into our board of directors meeting minutes. Don't try to get into our text messages. Don't download the black box from our truck. We don't yield for any of that. You all want to if you want to make peace with us, then you put enough money on the table where we can't say no. In the meantime, we're not yielding for anything. We're filing a suit now. We're going hard and fast after this case. We're going to get to the things that make you most uncomfortable, which is the other similar incidences of your knowledge about the dangers that you were presenting to innocent people. Those are the things that get them worried. And they're like, you combine that kind of mindset with real skillful lawyers who know how to cross-examine, how to use the rules of civil procedure. They're designed to keep, you look at Rule 1, I consider myself a Rule 1 lawyer. And people always go, what's Rule 1 say? So that's what was the benefit of me having Judge Haley as my civil procedure professor. Rule 1 says these rules shall, it's a commandment. It's a commandment. Number 1 commandment of trial lawyers. These rules shall be construed and interpreted and applied to ensure the just, speedy, and inexpensive resolution of every action. We're supposed to move with dispatch, with a sense of urgency. And when you bring that skillfully and with strength, because you know what you're doing and you know what their critical vulnerabilities are, you do that, and you're going to have a spectacular career as a trial lawyer. You're going to feel like you're walking an inch off the ground. You go, how did I ever get so lucky? Well, the only way you get lucky in this business is by working your ass off and really going after it. Learn from pros, do it, follow proven processes, and watch what happens. The more you go after it like that, the more great things start to happen. You get luckier and lucky. You remember what that's old saying? I don't know if it was Arnold Palmer or Chichi Rodriguez, but they said, the more I practice, the luckier I get. And the more you bring these strong, fast skill principles to bear on your clients' cases, more things start to happen for you. You start to see 7-figure outcomes and 8-figure outcomes. And a lot of lawyers that just, they haven't had the blessing I had of being raised by amazing mentors like I had. I remember one time, tell you this story, when I was a young appellate lawyer, he asked me to get a memo on the law for such and such. He wanted to be able to do something in a certain case. And I came back and recited the law to him. It was a beautiful little memo. He took that thing and he balled it up in a thing and he threw it at me and he says, God damn it, Andy, I didn't ask you to tell me the black letter law. I know the black letter law. I want you to show me how to win. Now go back in there and find me a way to win. And I was like, man, I thought I did a great job. I understood the mission. We're on a mission here. We're not trying to write a fancy brief. We got to win. We're trying to win this thing. And I learned over and over again, if you can't find a way in the books, the case law and the statutes or whatever else, then you get inventive. And you go back. One guy once told me, he said, what do you think happened before there was cases? Back in 1820, when Alabama became a state, it's 1819 actually. And the first lawyer shows up in front of the first judge on the case of first impression on that topic. They reasoned it out together. And that's what lawyers have to do. Lawyers have to reason it out with the judge. Judge, this can't be the law. The law can't turn people away like this. There's been an offense, there's been an injury, and you're telling me there's going to be no remedy? That can't be the law. If that becomes the law, you know what we're going to have? We're going to have people who no longer use the law to get it. They're going to take the law into their own hands. They're going to get their Louisville Slugger, or worse, they're going to use their car like this fool did out in, I don't know where that was, L.A., or they're going to their machine gun or their whatever, their AR-15. They're going to take the law into their own hands because they feel like they can't be heard, they can't be understood, they don't have an avenue. And that's what happens. People will boil over because people are just, they've got, the law has to provide a remedy. And that's where we civil lawyers, the rules of professional conduct in every state say that a lawyer is a public citizen with special responsibilities for the just administration of justice. We're a public citizen. You ever hear that? A public citizen? We're officers of the court, but we're public citizens with special responsibilities. It's our job to make sure the law does. And when the tort reformers go too far and they want to shut the courthouse doors down to everything so that they can make more money faster, we have to stand up. We have got to be the barricade to that. And I think that people still want there to be an opportunity for someone to be heard and understood. Even if they get rejected in court, at least they got heard. And they're not going to go out there and go postal on everybody with a machine gun. Anyway, I went off on a rant there. I'm sorry about that.
No, no, you're good. And it's important. You're passionate about this topic. And you're right. There are too many firms, and I speak to on a daily basis. I can say, recently this year, one of our clients, so as you know, we're a legal marketing firm. And what we do at GrowthX is help law firms like yours scale. So one of our largest cases from a client that we generated for them recently had a settlement for 24.1 million. Now, this case went on for 3 years, right? It was very unfortunate circumstance. Young 16-year-old was killed by a drunk driver. And at first the insurance company offered 50,000 and they said no and kept going on. And the family, they're not a very affluent family. They don't have a lot of money. So, dealing with the grief, the loss and everything going in, really, I think it was about 2.5 years in and they were going to give up. And they told the attorney, they're like, you know what, we're tired, we miss our daughter and this is just not going the way that we think it. And he said, just hold on. We don't want to give up now because this is something that has affected your life and your family's life and everybody you're surrounding forever. And eventually they were able to, get a settlement. And it was a jury settlement. Eventually the jury, allotted this amount of money to them. But if they were to just sit down and give up the fight, right? It would have been maybe $250,000. The first time, 50,000. When they came back, it was 250. And justice wouldn't have been served. And there's really no remedy to help when you lose a child. But when a company has to be accountable for it and they don't just sweep you under the rug for some, $250,000, probably not even how much they spend on processing fees for the amount of money that they collect every month from all their, customers put together. It's nothing. It's not even a drop in the bucket for them. So it's kind of disrespectful. And, some person loses their child and you're saying, sweep it on the rug here, take this little check and go on. It's like, that's the value. And, your mentality, it's not just a voracious, tenacious, go out there and win and kill. It's also compounded by the fact that you are representing people in their weakest, most hardest times. And they're looking to you not only to preserve their voice, but to also stand up for them and get the justice that needs to be served. Now, sometimes it's monetary. Sometimes it's, actions on the company itself so they can improve their safety so that future people are not injured or hurt. There's so many different remedies, but at the end of the day, if you truly believe what you're fighting in, you're always going to win. You're never going to give up, never surrender because you're not in the business of that. The reason that you've been so successful is because you have, I guess they could call it a bulldog mentality, right? You go in there, you fight, and you fight to win. You're not fighting to draw. You're not going in to say, hey, let's do pre-lit and see if we can come up with a deal. Unless it's, and you're a sharp guy. You can look at the case and see the ins and outs and the weak points. And if it's a strong case, there should be no reason to settle unless they're giving you an astronomical amount of money. And even then, if you're, a good poker player, you understand negotiations, they're probably worried about something deeper if they're coming at you with a big settlement in the beginning. And with that at hand, legal marketing, you've mentioned TV, you've mentioned digital ads, legal marketing can be loud, even gimmicky at times, especially when we see like some personal injury firms where, there's a guy with a big hammer or, he's got, this big briefcase and he's like, or a bag of money. He's like, I don't get paid unless you get paid. But you've stayed clear, focused, and still creative. What's your compass? Is there a media play, campaign, or a piece of content you're especially proud of? Or what's the biggest misconception about marketing that most lawyers get wrong?
Well, that's a great pivot because, marketing is attracting people. And probably the most critical thing to remember is you get what you ask for. And you have to ask. So if you want people to come to you with a certain thing, you need to ask. But what works in our shop is not what works with the consumer. It's like they say, don't show people how you make the sausage. Show them the sizzle on the grill, right? Nobody wants to see you grinding up pig parts and, putting it into intestine casings and, and all that. It's kind of a gross process, but that's the process. The process is not what sells. What sells is ease, speed, and greed. And so people say, hey, call me. It's just that easy, right? That's one way. It's an easy number, 251-888-8888. Call me at the eights. Or we get great results. I called Andy and he got me $500,000 from my car crash. Those are Speed and Greed direct response commercials. I think the market's saturated with them. On the 4th of July, to give you an idea, I can't stand lawyer ads. On the 4th of July, I realized it was a Friday and I had slept in a little bit. And I flipped on the news and thought, I think I'll catch up, see what the weather's going to be like, and I'll watch the local news. And then I realized it was a weekday. And I realized on a weekday, I'm going to be watching television in the box, the 8 to 5 box, whatever the box is. And there was going to be one lawyer ad after another, going to be probably 3 or 4 every commercial break. And I thought I'd rather get beat than watch a bunch of lawyer ads, because they're all the same and they're all Speed and Greed. They're all, hey, call me, call me, call me. You're going to get cases if you advertise, because somebody's going to like your face, someone's going to like my face. It becomes sort of a swimsuit contest, which one is more attractive to you kind of thing. I don't like that kind of advertising. What I've been moving more and more toward is talking about our strength, talking about our experience, talking about our approach. It's not going deep into the process. But like, for example, we say, don't wait, call the eights. And this is a true story. About 15 years ago, I was working on a triple death case. An 18-wheeler was speeding in the rain and he killed 3 people. So it happened at 8 o'clock on a Friday night. It was pouring down rain. And so I get hired after the funeral, and I always feel like I'm getting a late start because after this, I realized how important speed is. So anyway, I pull all the local news footage, because when 3 people die on a Friday night, they send every news crew to all the stations in town. And there, lo and behold, the news people are there within 45 minutes of the crash, and they're setting up their lights and they've got their little van. And so there's the guy with the headphones on. And he says, can you hear me? Test, 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 test. And he's going, yeah, we can hear you. And walking right behind him was my defense attorney. He was at the scene before the dang news people got there. They had not even extricated the bodies from the car yet. And I realized, wow, one thing that I want to create for people is a true sense of urgency on why they need to call me. Take care of your medical treatment and other safety issues first, then call me, because I have a team on the ready. We call it the rapid response protocol. When one of these significant cases comes in, man, we're like firemen. We're sliding down the brass pole. We're jumping in our boots and we're going. My investigator, my attorneys, my experts from outside, the medical ones, even the medical ones. But the guys that are going to do a total station on the scene, they're going to do a reconstruction. They're going to do the downloads. But I have my investigators out there trying to find witnesses and statements and videos and, document all the stuff on the scene as well, doing traffic patterns, counting cars, looking at speeds, all those things that help you build a case. I think that speed, and plus it's a commandment. Rule 1 of the Alabama Rules of Civil Procedure says that a lawyer shall ensure the speedy resolution of a case. So the faster I can get to the scene, I am finding that is more compelling. And for a while there, it was about 7 or 8 years ago, I ran this thing. Call me now, call me immediately. People were calling me from the car before the ambulance got there. And because I was really effective with that messaging. And I honestly got so much work, I had to slow it down, because some people were mad. They go, you should be telling people to call you that quickly. I'm like, yes, I should, because I want to be on the scene. Why do you think they have lawyers on a Friday night in the pouring rain that are on scene? Lawyers, not to mention the safety director. They were bringing in people by airplane and helicopter because they just killed 3 people, and they wanted to get there as fast as they could so that they could get a good handle early on the evidence. Well, that's what I want. I don't want the insurance company to have the upper hand. But that's been one of the effective things. People are attracted to Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump's strongest, whether you like him or not. The man's strong. He's strong. He stands in full strength, in full defense of people's and the values that matter to people. That always is appealing. So if you can bring strength, the Speed and Greed model, I think it's always going to work. Because why do you think you have so many car dealerships going, hey, it's a 4th of July sale, fireworks everywhere. We're giving deep discounts on all our automobiles. Come right now, and all you got to do is you can drive off the car lot with your brand new car. We don't say no to anybody. Those are all direct response, high intensity, Speed and Greed. And if those commercials didn't work, they wouldn't run them. They run them, those direct response, Speed and Greed commercials, across the board, because they work. And if you do enough of that, you're going to get plenty of work. and you're going to get, but do you know what to do with the cases? Do you know how to sift the wheat from the chaff when they hit the door? That's where the really, really top tier law firms, they've learned how to deliver for the smaller cases without having to throw them back. You don't want to pass them on to another law firm, and they know how to work the cases that require a lot more work. They know how to work them up quickly and get it done. But it's a balancing act, because again, you've got that big marketing bill to pay. Why advertise if you're going to be in last place and just pay $20,000 for every case you get in the door? No one can afford to do that. But
No.
anyway,
And with that at hand, when it comes to marketing, specifically personal injury, there's two different concepts, right? If you're criminal defense, you really want to focus on, urgency as one of the top things. Why? Because usually, just like personal injury, it's an emergency, but it's something that's a little bit more like, hey, I need you to be in court tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. to file a bond motion because so and so is locked up and they're not giving him bond. Or, hey, we had 2 weeks to get an attorney before our arraignment or pretrial, and the judge said if we don't show up this time, you're gonna have to go ahead without an attorney. Hire, boom, done. Now, in the same essence, there's a statistic. If they call a firm, let's say it's potential client, personal injury, right? They get in a car accident, they call a firm. The first firm to actually speak to them, not a human, not a auto response, not somebody in the Philippines, but an actual human, possibly a paralegal, they have a 75% chance of closing that person. And really, it's a dependent on, the type of case they have versus, losing it out in the file. Now, when you're marketing as a personal injury firm, it's about having a large net, right? Because every now and then you do get the multi-million-dollar cases, and they make up for that. Let's say if you're spending $100,000 a month, that's $1.2 million a year. Let's say 90% of your cases average between $20,000 to $50,000 in settlements. But it's that 10% that gets you the 3.1 million, the $2 million, the $10 million, the $15 million settlements that brings your return on investment exponentially higher. And that return on investment is why personal injury firms do it, right? Because, I have a firm that I currently work with, and they have a very structured system where cases under 50,000 is handled by one team, right? Very efficiently, very effectively. Any case that's gone through review and it's seen that, hey, this case is going to have to potentially go to trial, we see that there's a very high lucrative point on it. We're going to set it to team, the next team above. And then they have a team that's even higher. That's only, the managing partners and some of the real experts there that they're taking on the cases that they have without a shadow of a doubt that, hey, this is going to be a 7-figure case minimum. We're going to have to bring the experts in. We're going to have to do the analysis. We're going to have to download the accents. We're going to have to do the role play, everything back and forth, cross-examination. And that's how systems are built out. And you've done this so successfully with your firm. And I think, I can tell you, I've talked to so many personal injury attorneys, and just that passion that you bring to your beliefs and how you operate your firm and bringing in, hiring. This is my third company, right? I sold my first two companies. This is my third company. We've done, like I said, we've done over $100 million in results for our clients. And I can tell you, being an owner, wearing multiple hats, when I learned the art of hiring, probably was one of the most effective lessons that I learned in the business, because I had been cycling through people again and again and again, hiring somebody. They said they had 10 years of experience. They did this, they did that, they did this. When I see them actually work, and it's like, I'm looking for thinkers. Looking for doers. I'm looking for people that can bring ideas to me that we can implement and make this better. I'm not looking for people that I give, hey, this is task A through Z, do this. Now, there's no thought, how should I make it better? Because I don't know everything. I'm looking for the team that I build around me to support what I do know and what I don't know, so we can fill those gaps and be a more fluid system. And with that, you've just done an amazing job. I mean, you're one of the top trucking attorneys in the United States, and most people don't even know what that means. Tell us, what does that mean? You are probably the most prolific and most well-known top trucking accident attorney in the United States, handled multi-million-dollar cases. And how does that really play out for you, Andy?
thank you for saying that. There's some great lawyers in this country, but it's not hard to find. I've probably got half a dozen books on my desk right here that were written by some great lawyers that handle trucking cases. It's so interesting. Everybody follows basically the same approach. But finding the right people, when you learn how to do that, these folks that are just gonna just grab it and go and run hard and fast with it. Those are the types of lawyers I only want those guys in my firm now, men and women. But I will tell you, there was a great trucking defense firm here in Alabama, and they're in multiple states. But he wrote a white paper years ago that I got a hold of. It was for defense. It presented to a defense bar association thing. And he said, when you get a top tier, that's how he referred to them. That's where I got the terminology, top tier. When you get one of the top tier firms to appear opposite one of your big catastrophic cases, he's talking to the defense attorneys and the defense insurers, you want to rush in with a big offer as soon as possible, because top tier lawyers make it happen. They will dig and dig and dig, and they will not stop digging. It's a completely different ball game when you're dealing with lawyers like that. And it is true. And I mean, I'm flattered that you say such kind things about my career. I've had great success with the trucking. The trucking, it requires a special knowledge about, I mean, if you ever look at the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, they're this thick, and that doesn't even define all of the other opinions and there's all these other smaller regs that are available to support it. There's articles galore written. If you know how to dig, if you know what you're looking for, you can find it. A lot of lawyers don't know what they're looking for. I have this saying that I always find what I'm looking for, but you got to know. And so if you're looking to build a great law firm, you better get some great lawyers in there. You can't build a great law firm without great lawyers, in my opinion. Now, some people get lucky. They have this really great brand and they do the hamburger flipping widgetizing of the cases. See, I just couldn't sleep with myself knowing that was happening. And I've been through, like you, when you described that you were going through people like that, I was too. And they're not bad people. They're just not in the right line of work. And you've heard of flow.
Yes, sir.
You want people in flow. You want to be in flow. You want your wife, your children, your loved ones. You want everybody to be in flow, because when you're in flow, you're happy. Flow can be defined like when you're so engaged with something that you lose track of time. That's been the best way to describe flow. Well, what Culture Index has taught me is that, so here's what flow is. You can literally use flow to picture yourself in a canoe. Do you go upstream? Are you trying to paddle upstream against your traits? You're not in flow. You're working your ass off and you're miserable. But if you could turn that canoe and go downstream with your traits, your natural born traits, your preferences, and the way you were wired, if you could go downstream with those traits, now you're in flow. Now your life is a joy. It's a dream come true. So what I try to do with the people in my office is put them in a position where they get into flow. If they can get into flow, they're going to levitate. They're going to be 3 to 5 times more productive. 3 to 5, they learn 3 to 5 times more quickly. There's a great YouTube out there that I've passed around about this, because you just know it's true. You see somebody, they say, do something you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life, right? So that's what flow is. And so if you've learned that, look, you're not going to, probably, I'd say 5 or 10% of the population has the natural red meat eating mindset to be a true trial lawyer. Now, how many of them actually go to law school? You could say 5 to 10% of the people coming out of law school have the kind of traits that we're looking for truly great trial lawyers, top tier guys, and men and women. Those are the ones you want. And if you don't settle, if you keep waiting, they will find their way to you. They're called trailblazers and architects and enterprisers and daredevils. They have a high risk tolerance and they get their confidence from within. They don't have to get approval. They don't have to have social acceptance. That can be a real hindrance for a trial lawyer. It can make them a good jury lawyer, but when it comes to getting to the heart of a big case, what did the defendant know and when did they know it? And can you show the jury that they recklessly disregarded the rights and safety of others? Recklessness is where it's all at. If you can prove recklessness and get a judge to let you go to the jury on punitive damages, man, you've got that insurance company worried nonstop. I mean, they are worrying because juries love to make a difference. And in Alabama, a wrongful death case is purely punitive, and you can get to punitive damages, unlimited number. It's up to the jury if you can prove reckless disregard. Reckless disregard for the rights and safety of others really gets a jury going because they almost have an interest in the outcome of the case. Ladies and gentlemen, your job is the purpose of your punitive verdict is to protect the public. Well, they're a part of the public. It's public safety. So your verdict should speak loud enough and should be strong enough to be heard and understood by the defendant and the people in his industry to say, you come into Alabama and you recklessly disregard the rights and safety of others and hurt somebody, you can expect that the jury's going to make you leave that courtroom with a black eye, one that you're going to feel for a long time. And that's the only way to get the message, because when you watch the way they defend cases, it's like they won't even acknowledge they did anything wrong, much less that it was reckless. And so that is, to me, really satisfying to lawyers that have the natural gifts to find out that they can make such a meaningful impact. And like that couple, you look about what happens with delay. Even 2.5 years, let's say that your client, your firm that you're talking about, 2.5 years in, the clients are like, we're pooped, we're exhausted, you're never going to bring our baby back, and we'll just take whatever they're going to offer. That's 30 months in. I mean, imagine if it goes 3 years, 4 years. There's only so much emotional resilience you can have. But when you bring strength, speed, and skill to a client's case, and they know you're just like a bull, man, you're scratching the ground and you're snuffing and snorting and you're ready to charge, they love that. They feel like someone's standing up for them. It's sort of like what Trump does. He's standing up. He's standing in strong defense of what they care about. And when you do that for a client, you get them all you can increase their emotional resilience and their longevity as a client because they see you going hard and fast after the case. You're not. And they will hold on with you. But if you just drag your feet, you wait till 2 weeks before the statute runs to file, and you're always hoping, you're waiting for the insurance company to make you a decent offer, that is the weakest, most demoralizing thing that you can do to a client. And I think that's when you get a culture around strength, speed, and skill, and all of the little things that have to be done about how to make your client appealing, how to prove recklessness, how to use the rules, make offensive motions with the rules of civil procedure, how to pop limits. We haven't even talked about that. How many times do you see a case where if you think, God, if only there was $100 million in insurance, if there were more insurance, I could do great for this client, but there's just none. We lawyers, top tier lawyers know that you can try to get an excess verdict in place. You can try to pop limits by proving that the insurance company negligently failed to settle for policy limits when they had the opportunity. Doesn't happen that often, but about 25% of the time you get lucky and the insurance company will drop the ball and all of a sudden you've got unlimited coverage, which is fantastic. But we do that from the get-go. When all these lower value cases where you go, okay, gosh, we got a $5 million injury and $25,000 in coverage, happens all the time. We try to put the insurance company in an excess situation. And if we're successful, then we can kind of have the outcome that you had, where we can go from a $50,000 offer to a $20 million offer. And that's fantastic. The most exciting thing a lawyer can do is if he can use the law, the insurance company's duty to settle for the wrongdoer, use that offensively. Now you talk about satisfaction. Well, we do that as a matter of course now. We want to see those smaller cases have a huge upside if the insurance company walks right into the propeller blade. You've got to let them walk right into it. You're going to say, don't walk into the propeller blade. That thing will chop your head off. Don't walk into the propeller blade. You've got 10 more days to settle this case for your policy limits. Don't walk into the propeller blade. They got 7 days. They keep walking right toward it. Don't walk into the propeller blade. And then the time comes and go, you just walked right into the propeller blade. And now we've got unlimited coverage. That's how you have to do it in Alabama. I know in other states it might be a little easier, but in Alabama, that's how you can open up limits. But I love what we do. And I think that you got to have people really get turned on by the David and Goliath mindset.
You've touched on some amazing topics today. Andy Citrin is probably one of the top performing personal injury attorneys in the United States, guys. His firm represents most of the Gulf Coast. He's Alabama's probably number one personal injury attorney. He's skilled in trucking accidents, MVAs. I mean, you name it. And not just that, he embodies what it is to be a top performing legal mind in 2025. He has the savviness and the skill of old school attorney, but he has the knowledge and the execution of a tech savvy 2025 entrepreneur. I mean, he's working systems effectively, seamlessly, and building teams of alpha workers, right? At the end of the day, whether you're alpha male or alpha female, that's who he wants for his firm, because he understands at the end of the day, if you treat your people right, they're going to treat your customers right, and the system continues to go. If you're not ready to really fight the fight, don't get into this business, guys. If you just want to sit down and settle some cases and, be friends with the insurance guys, you're never going to really make it. You got to win, you got to fight, and you got to fight to win at the end of the day. But we have a lightning round, Andy. It's a couple of quick questions.
All
A
right.
couple things like this. In the past 10 years, how much would you say your firm has grown, percentage-wise?
You mean by case numbers? It's
Revenue
exploded.
quality.
Revenue, it's grown. It's probably doubled or tripled in the last 10 years.
Double or triple, guys?
Tripled.
300%. 300%. And he was already at a very strong position 10 years ago. So 300% is astronomical when we talk about this field, right? Now, if he was doing $50,000 a year and he went to 150,000, 300% doesn't mean much. But when you're running a multi-million-dollar settlement personal injury firm, 300% is that 300%. I mean, it is what it speaks like it is. Outside of that, Andy, how many cases you guys think you guys are bringing in a month from your marketing efforts?
Probably about 70 to 80 per month, depending on how much. We have a capacity issue because of the quality first mindset, which is if we could be the number one share of voice in our market, we could put as many billboards up as our competition, and we could just bombard the pay-per-click and all that. But then we would have a capacity problem. And I want to tell you this great story. I don't really have time for it, but if you don't keep your case load manageable, you don't have time to do the really good lawyering. The Hall of Fame to me, we have an Alabama jury verdict reporter, and to me, they have this list in the last 25 years from 2000 to 2025. So the list of all the $1 million plus verdicts in the state of Alabama. That's the Hall of Fame to me. It's not how many cases did you move through your firm or what was your revenue. It's how many lawyers that got big verdicts. And there's a couple $1 billion verdicts in there, hundreds and $1 million verdicts, in the 8 digits, 50, 80, 100, or $90 million verdicts, plenty of 7-digit verdicts. But that's the Hall of Fame.
Well, guys, Andy, this was outstanding. The clarity, conviction, consistency you bring to the injury space is a model for any attorney aiming for greatness. For anyone listening, if you want to follow the journey, learn more, or just see what excellence looks like in action, you can find Andy at Andy Citrin Injury Attorneys. He's in Mobile, Alabama. They handle the Gulf Coast, and, they are one of the best there is in the business. Andy's having a little bit of internet technical difficulties, but guys, he makes a great point. It's not about how much your firm makes. It's how much you make for your clients. And that's one of the things where we focus at GrowthX. We talk about how we've generated over $100 million in revenues and profits for our clients, because that's the real satisfaction. That is where we get our notoriety. That's where we actually see our success. It's not so much we've been able to scale our business to X amount of dollars a month or per year. It's about how much have we been able to produce for our clients? How much have we done for them? How much do we continue to do? And where do we see ourselves in the future? And how can we help further businesses and law firms grow exponentially? He brings up a great point: sustainability. It's not just about bringing as many cases as you want on. It's about bringing the cases that you can actually handle and provide them an equal level of high quality, sophistication, and service. And if you're looking for something like that, come to GrowthX, the legal marketer for law firms. #1 in the United States for 2024. We are the best of the best that has ever done it, and we continue to strive to be the best of the best. We take constructive criticism. We work for our clients, and it's not about the bottom line. It's about making sure at the end of the day we are scaling efficiently and sustainably, so law firms just like yours can be the next powerhouse, like Andy Citrin, like the Morgan and Morgans, like the Pond Lahakis. Guys, it's 2025. Work smarter, not harder. And remember, if you're looking for a growth partner that can produce real results in real time and produce real exponential returns, check out growthxmarketing.ai. where the millionaire mindset focuses and pushes you to the next level, where we sit with you and you drive your revenues, increase your profits, and make sure at the end of the day, your firm is not only a scalability model, but a sustainability model. Until then, thanks. Have a great one, guys. Bye-bye.
Own your growth. Scale with systems powered by GrowthX. Subscribe to Success in Excess for those who lead with precision and scale with purpose.